Hey friends. Well, another big day. They reset our house today. I came into my office this morning, spent a few hours, and I walked out into the house, and our furniture was back. It was like we live here again. It was kind of remarkable. So yeah, I I'm experiencing that feeling which I mentioned, I think, in yesterday's post or the day before, that like the energy of the house is just shifting in this subtle but very noticeable way. It's kind of like this weird thing because it's both hard to put my finger on exactly what it is, but at the same time it's so obvious and so overwhelmingly clear that the house is now ours again. It belongs to us again. So anyway, that's kind of a fun shift, and I think my brother's in town. It's like there's a whole bunch of ways in which I feel like I'm coming home again. So, and I had a call with my coach today, my Tony Robbins coach, Carine, who I know I've mentioned on this post. It's been a little while because I haven't seen her in a while, but we had a wonderful session today, and it was sort of a framing up what 2022 is about. And so she had me go through an exercise that I found really illuminating, and it was basically, she said, okay, imagine you have these three overlapping circles. You have a circle for self, a circle for work, and a circle for relationship. And then she asked me to define or describe how big each circle is. If self is kind of like self-care, self-development, growth, what that sphere of taking care of oneself, feeding oneself, making sure that we're nourished, that we are inspired, happy, getting our needs met. Work is our work, connection to the world, contribution, significance, all these, some ways in which we externally engage with the world through our work, and then relationships. And so first thing she asked me to do is describe which of my circle, how large each circle was. And I said that what I recognized was, my self circle and my work circle are pretty healthy size. My relationships circle maybe feels a little underserved. It feels like, and this is just me kind of like, it's me seeing trying to identify where does my energy flow kind of most abundantly. Now, interestingly, there's this interesting thing that has happened over the past year or so, which is that the work that I'm doing has shifted from being something which is almost entirely happening in a bubble into something that's very outwardly focused. Even though a lot of my work happens virtually online, I'm also developing relationships there in an incredibly deep way. So that was kind of interesting, and I think that was I was very encouraged to notice. Oh wow, look at how my work is actually sort of like, obviously none of these circles are all kind of overlapping. They're not entirely cordoned off unto themselves. My work is actually generating these relationships that are feeding me in a whole new way, that they're a type of relationship that I haven't really ever had before. Certainly not as consistently and as in depth as I have over the past year. So that was really fun to realize. But I also realized, if I had to say where do I put of those three, where do I put the least amount of my focus? I would have to say it's relationships, because I feel like I have a relatively robust now kind of self-nurturing ritual and routine. I've really made it a priority. I've really kind of blocked out. I mean, I just get up in the morning, basically, is what it means. But that feels like it really gives me a connection to myself in a powerful way. I taught a couple of qigong classes today at the school where Annalise attends and that Katie runs. And I noticed, I've been practicing qigong quite a bit, so I noticed that I was just I had a lot to give. I had a lot to offer. It didn't take me long to get the engine running in terms of like ushering people into the practice, which is very fun to identify and very fun to feel. That's another way, actually, even just over the course of today, that I've found, okay, there's another overlap there. That's a sphere of development that has essentially sort of remained within the self circle, but that also has potential to open out into relationships and to broaden, basically, for that practice to become something that is not strictly for me. It's not just me at 4 a.m. doing my qigong practice. It can be something that ripples out. It can be something that actually travels and creates change beyond me. So, that was one of my takeaways from the conversation that I had with Carine today. Was really interesting, and it really did give me a kind of a lens to see my energy allocation in an interesting way. But then it also, as I reflected on it over the last couple of hours, it also became something much larger than that. And it was like, oh, here are some, because like then one of the examples that I came up with right while I was talking to her is, she was like, so what I said was, okay, for 2022, I want to keep my self circle about the same size. I want to take my work circle and actually maybe make it slightly smaller. It doesn't need to be a lot smaller, but it needs to be slightly smaller. But I want my relationship circle to grow. I want to put more energy into those relationships, into that connection, into that just connection with people and the world outside myself, not strictly through my work. And one of the ways that, of course, that manifests is in my family and wanting to feel as though I have significant time to be connected to Katie and Annalise, that my family, the ones who live with me. And then I realized, my God, this is so funny that it's working out this way, because literally on January 1st of 2022, I'm going to leave New Mexico and go to Houston, Texas for 2 months to do a show, taking me completely out of my family. Now, doesn't mean it's going to take me out of relationship, but it was like in the same breath as I was saying, I want to make 2022 about my relationships. I want to grow that circle. I then also realized, my God, I'm already set up to like completely prioritize work for the first 2 months of 2022. So that was interesting to note. B, what happened next was really interesting, because I realized that, I go to Texas, I have 1 month of rehearsals, then the show opens. Then I have another month in Texas where I'm just playing the show every night. But all day, every day, I have time. All day, every day, I have my time to myself. I'll still be teaching and doing my work, but I'll have a series of weeks where basically I have as many hours as I could ask for to work, to do whatever I want, I suppose. And I had initially been thinking about, okay, well, what are some of the things that are important to me? Practicing piano is definitely going to be important to me. Meditating and doing these, and I realized, oh, I'm building the self bubble. But what if I took that time and used it to really get my business, really get my teaching business up and running, launch a website, launch my course. I could record an entirely new course while I'm there because I'm going to have the time to do that. And that's time that's hard to find when I'm at home. It's harder to find that time when I'm here because there are just more commitments. So, and I realized, how good would it feel to come back from Houston, back to New Mexico in March, early mid-March, and know that I have my foundation under me, that my business is set, that I've invested that time and energy while I wasn't at home, and all that stuff is up and running, so that when I come home, I actually would need management, but I would be able to invest more time into those relationships, into that family, into that side of myself that I'm feeling like, oh, that bubble's just a little small. I'd like it to be a little bigger. So anyway, that was it's just another way in which, like, putting the attention in the right, investing that, allocating that attention and that energy into one category doesn't necessarily mean that you were only doubling down on that category. There's a whole ripple effect here. And it just felt like a win to have realized that now, before I get into the process, before I actually get into the time, and I haven't evaluated the priorities that I have, or I haven't evaluated the outcome that I want to have from that time. One thing that I feel like I'm learning is, because I've said this before on this post, but my Tony Robbins coach is always asking me, what's the outcome? What's the outcome? What's the outcome? And sometimes I'm like, what do you mean outcome? I don't know why does everything have to be about an outcome? Can't it be about being in the moment? And what I've learned is those two things are not incompatible. And if anything, they're mutually reinforcing, because if I know my outcome for March, what I want to do with February, and where I want to be in March of 2022, I can relax so much more. I can be in the moment now so much more, because I'm looking down the road and anticipating what's going to be most valuable, and what I'm going to be most excited and inspired by creating. I won't simply have to be in reaction to what happened today and what comes up tomorrow, and all, there's a kind of like shifting from thing to thing that can really be it's living moment to moment doesn't always mean being in the moment. The capacity to be in the moment actually involves a perspective that allows for the moment to be what it needs to be, as opposed to the moment being in reaction. If you're outrunning a saber-toothed tiger, you're in the moment, but you're outrunning a saber-toothed tiger. Your options are pretty limited. And that's the sort of like fight or flight version of being in the moment. Now, obviously, I've never outrun a saber-toothed tiger. I admit it's an overly dramatic metaphor, but you get my point. If we're in reaction, if there's urgency in emergency, we'll be in the moment. We'll be living in the moment, but we won't have much capacity to expand in the moment, or to channel energy in this moment and in a conscious direction that leads to the kind of growth we maybe want to see. So simply being in the moment isn't necessarily valuable unto itself. That's a fallacy, I think. I think there's a kind of there's a perspective upon our life that helps us fruitfully remain grounded in the moment and effectively engage moment to moment. So that's my takeaway from today, and my ongoing absorption of the lesson that actually envisioning outcomes is important. It's important and it's helpful. It's something I would I could afford to resist it less. So, thanks for watching, people. So much love. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.